Welcome to this week's edition of Hockey Unfiltered with Ken Campbell. I am the sidekick Dylan Waugh. I am the Niles to Ken's Fraser. This week we're going to be talking about the Ottawa Senators. We're going to be talking about the Frozen Four, the OHL Cup, the Dallas Stars, the Pittsburgh Penguins, and of course some news coming out of the general managers meeting. You can follow us on Twitter at Ken_Campbell27 and at _Dylan Waugh, and this podcast at Hockey No Filter. Stick around. You know, this is just a lesson that if you give me, 9 or 10 cracks at the can on something, eventually, a blind squirrel will find a nut.
People out there don't know that it took you that many times. They're just hearing it for the first time. So maybe just pretend like you got it on the first time and
that's like the from the Lego movie where Batman's trying to throw the wrench at the button and then he finally hits the button. He goes, "First try."
Never saw it, but anyway.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Yeah, okay.
So we're going to start off with a bit of a more difficult topic because there was a very surprising passing in the hockey world just recently, which is that of the Ottawa Senators owner Eugene Melnyk. And now the other day you wrote a fantastic article, which I thought was it summarized his very complicated legacy with the Ottawa Senators. That's on your Substack, which can be found at kencampbell.substack.com. And I was just wondering if you just wanted to chat a little bit about Eugene.
Yeah, I think it's probably appropriate to address it and flesh it out a little bit here. First of all, obviously, a terrible tragedy. First and foremost. I mean, Eugene Melnyk was only 62 years old.
That's incredible.
That's very, very young. And I mean, I guess you take some solace in the fact that he, was able to get a liver 7 years ago and got 7 more years of life than he otherwise may have been able to get. But I mean, you remember the human being, right? The human being leaves behind a partner. He leaves behind 2 daughters that are, I think, fairly young. I think they're in university or around that age. So, a terrible tragedy, but a very complicated legacy for sure. A polarizing figure in the hockey world. Yeah. And it's funny because, in 2003, he essentially saved the Ottawa Senators from I think it'd be a little premature to say that they were going to move, but that would have been definitely would have been a possibility. Yeah. Whereas he stepped in when really nobody else was willing to, at the time it was 2003. We were a year away from the league shutting down for a year. The Canadian dollar was trading at like 71 cents. Yeah. The New York Rangers had a payroll of 76 million and Winnipeg or Minnesota had a payroll of 20 million. The tech industry in Ottawa had gone down the crapper, for lack of a better term. So it wasn't a real sort of super great investment for anybody at the time. And he stepped up and saved that team. So I think the people of Ottawa should remember that. There have been times probably more recently where, it's gone the other way. Mm-hmm. The same team that he saved, he sort of made a veiled threat that he would move. And that really, really struck a lot of people in the wrong way and got a lot of people awfully upset. But the one thing that I will say about Eugene Melnyk and what he did is, I think one of the worst parts of all of this is he's not going to get to see through this rebuild this teardown that he sort of authorized in 2018. Yeah. I mean, he saw where the team was going, and he said, "Okay, we're stripping it down to the bone." How many times in the past 2 or 3 decades have Toronto Maple Leaf fans yearned for a rebuild like that? Yeah, yearned for it. Yeah. We're dying for it. Yeah. And ownership was like, "No, we're not going to do it. We're going to build on the fly because we don't want to miss playoff dates. We don't want to miss the revenues that come from playoff dates. We'd rather make the playoffs and win a round or two and sort of muck around the middle there than actually, tank and crater and get these elite players that we can get at the top of the draft." And now, they're still a ways away. They're still actually quite a ways away.
The Senators.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to probably pick in the top 5 again this year.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's there. I mean, the Erik Karlsson trade, man, they got good return on that trade.
Yeah.
They got good return on Mark Stone. They got, for those guys that they moved out of the organization, they got really good young returns. And now these guys are starting to find themselves as NHL players. I mean, Josh Norris, Drake Batherson, Alex Formanton, Tim Stutzla, on the way. They've got Jake Sanderson. They've got some decent prospects coming on the way as well. So, it's sad that he's not going to be able to see what that final product is going to look like. It's sad.
I think your point of going back to 2003 was an interesting one because it's so easy for us to get caught up in like recency bias,
right.
like what's been happening lately. But I mean, ultimately Eugene Melnyk was a person.
Yep.
Like any of us, subject to the same folly and all the rest of it that people are subject to. And when you think about how quickly, and for a reason, I'm not completely dismissing him, but dismissing this, but for a reason. But when you think about how quickly the Ottawa Senators fans turned on him, there must have been a point in his head, a part of in his brain that said, like, I saved this franchise.
Yeah.
10 years ago, I saved this. I bought this when nobody else would. And there was no guarantee that I was going to make a nickel off of it. As a matter of fact, probably a decent chance I was going to lose some money on it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the way that you took that bird's eye view, I think was hugely important because his legacy is complicated, but it also it puts a lens on it. It puts a human lens on it.
Right. Right. I just think you have to have an accurate portrayal on both sides. I mean, there were
journalism, if you will.
If you will. Yeah, there were some dark moments and some things that he did that were, really, really counterproductive to that franchise. But all in all, I would say that he's on the positive side of the ledger for sure.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting now is what happens to the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah.
Do they... I mean, like I said, his daughters are very young.
Yeah.
I don't know what I think he's said that he's got it set up that it's going to stay in his family for generations. I don't know that that's feasible. I would expect, and I mean, just reading tea leaves, not anything else. I would expect that the team at some point will be sold, and one of the caveats of selling that team it has to stay in Ottawa, and I think that's where you can see some positivity as well, because I mean, part of the negative part of Eugene Melnyk's legacy is that he tried to get the rink downtown. It ended up in a bunch of people suing each other, a lot of hard feelings, a lot of crossing swords with the city, and it just never got any traction. And now, if suppose there's some new ownership and maybe they'll be able to resurrect that downtown arena project and get things going with that as well. So
So let's look at the on ice product, because you were talking about the rebuild just a second ago. The opinions on Ottawa's rebuild are extremely mixed. I was listening to your friend Stephen Ellis at the Hockey News, and he said that he thinks that Ottawa will be the next Canadian team to win the Cup.
Well, he's a big stupid head, so.
You seem to have a lot of those guys as friends, don't you? Present company excluded, of course. But then, Andrew Berkshire was on my Habstition podcast, and he laid out he's not a hot take guy, but he laid out what I consider a very hot take, which is that he thinks that Montreal Canadiens are closer than the Ottawa Senators, because he simply just doesn't see that elite style talent such as a Nick Suzuki or even potentially a Cole Caulfield on the Ottawa Senators. He sees a lot of very good pieces as opposed to like the kind of build around sort of pieces, right? Romanov's a good piece. They shouldn't be building their defense around him because he's just fine.
Yeah.
So my curiosity is, do you think that there's any specific piece of the Ottawa Senators that's missing in this rebuild?
I do. I think their bottom six is really not up to par.
Well, depth is the easiest. Thing
Depth. And I think, I mean, if you're going to build a team and you're going to take advantage of this young talent, at some point you've got to spend money, right? You got to spend money. You got to be a cap team. And they're not a cap team, and they're not close to being a cap team right now, right? So I look at a guy like, I don't know, like say Connor Brown. He's up, I think, after next year, $3.6 million. He'll be 28 years old.
Yeah.
He's going to want more money.
It's traditionally when players look for their payday.
Right. And he's going to want more money, and he's probably going to walk. Well, then what are you doing? Like, if you can't find a place for a hardworking, like, guy that's provides leadership and kills penalties and does all the little things and is coachable and that, then are you really in the game? Or are you just constantly cycling young players through and then becoming a farm team for the rest of the NHL, which is what Arizona Coyotes did for years, right?
Yeah.
Like by the time they get to be at a spot where they can help, well, you can't afford them, so you trade them for more futures, then more futures come in, and it just becomes a big cycle.
Yeah.
I like a team that has, Josh Norris, Tim Stützle, and maybe Shane Pinto down the middle, but you know what? That's a good point. There's not elite talent. I mean, is Thomas Chabot a Norris Trophy winner? He might be
probably the closest thing to elite talent in the sense of he's a number one defenseman.
Yeah.
And I don't know that there's 32 bona fide number one defensemen in the league, just like I don't know that there's 32 bona fide starting goaltenders in the league, and I don't know that there's 32 number one centers in the league. Like actually guys that you would say, yes, he's the one that I want as my first line center.
Right.
And I would say that if there's 15 or 20 number one defensemen in the league, I'd say Thomas Chabot is one of them.
Sure. And I think, too, they're tired of hearing the word rebuild in Ottawa, and they should be tired of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and Pierre Dorion said before this year, I don't want to hear that word anymore. Well, sorry, but it's still...
Yeah, then you got to win.
Yeah. Then you have to not be rebuilding, right? And they still, they traded Nick Paul. That was a confounding one. Yeah, and then they picked up Travis Hamonic, which was the biggest head scratcher of the whole trade deadline, as far as I was concerned. So to me, I mean, the rebuild is still going on. It's still going to be going on for a little while. Hopefully, maybe. I know Ottawa Senators fans don't want to hear this, but I'm sure they don't want to be in the lottery in 2023.
Yeah.
But if you're in the lottery in 2023, you're getting one of those guys. You're getting one of those guys.
Yeah.
You're getting Connor Bedard. You're getting Adam Fantilli.
Yeah.
You're getting Matvei Michkov. Then you've got your guy. I
call them Connor Bedard, Michkov, and the other fella.
Oh, okay.
Because I always forget Fantilli's name.
Yeah, well, you're going to be hearing a lot about the other fella next year. He's going to be playing at the University of Michigan.
Yeah.
And he's a great, big, strong, talented guy.
I know.
Yeah.
It's my stupidity. I call "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" that movie with George Clooney and the other two fellas. and those other two fellas are fantastic. So
okay.
This is on me, is what I'm trying to say.
It's on you. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is my horrible memory. Okay, so let's switch gears.
But that's interesting. Like that. I never thought of it that way. Like they have a lot of good players, but they don't have any first team all-stars.
Well, you see,
studs, award winners. Future Hall of Famers, maybe. Thomas Chabot, maybe.
You see, you called your friend a big stupid head. I've got very smart friends.
Right. Okay.
That I hang around on the flip side. So, and I would consider Andrew Berkshire one of the smarter fellas that I know.
He makes a lot of sense with that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no Suzuki, there's no Caulfield in Ottawa right now.
Yeah. And now they've, of course, got a lot more pieces.
Yeah, they've got...
Montreal does, but... in terms of that guy that you build around, like Montreal doesn't have to worry necessarily about getting a Shane Wright this year because they've got Nick Suzuki, who's if not already guaranteed by next year as one of the top 15 centers.
And I'm not convinced Shane Wright is that guy either.
Interesting.
He might be, but I'm not convinced he is.
Okay.
Yep.
Before we get off the Ottawa Senators, any guesses how long before they reach contender status?
Wow. I'd say at least 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Still another couple of years of tough sliding, I think.
Yeah. But not rebuilding.
Especially in the East, in that division.
I know.
I mean, that's a brutal division. It's tough. I think the days of the Ottawa Senators, hoarding draft picks and getting 3 first-round picks and accumulating all these young assets. I think that part has been done.
Yes,
and they've got the product of that.
Yep.
And it's coming up.
Yeah.
I mentioned Jake Sanderson. I mean he's one of the best players in college hockey.
Yeah. I
worry about his ability to stay healthy. If he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be an absolute top 2 stud in the NHL. So
really,
yeah, oh yeah. He'll be a hell of a defenseman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's switch gears here for a little bit.
Okay.
Talk about some other young fellas.
Yes, young fellas.
Yep. Gosh, I'm just getting older by the minute, aren't I?
We all are, Dylan.
I know.
Nobody's getting younger.
That's how it works.
Yeah, I know.
Stupid linear time. Switching gears for a minute, talking about some other young fellas. Frozen Four championships coming up.
Young fellas. Yes, sir.
Well, it's your fault. You were showing me some Johnny Cash tunes before we got started. So, what do you think about those storylines there, young fella?
In the Frozen Four?
In the Frozen Four. What storylines are you following for the Frozen Four?
I think the big one is the Michigan Wolverines. They're in the Final Four. They're in the Frozen Four. They're playing Denver in the first game, and then the winner of Minnesota and Minnesota State, Mankato.
The Rough Riders. Intercept a pass from the Rough Riders.
They're playing, and then the two teams will meet in the final. To me, Michigan is really, really intriguing. They have 13 NHL draft picks on their team. I'm not sure that I've ever... I'm sure it's happened in junior hockey before that there have been 13 draft picks on a team, but I don't know that there's ever been 13 NHL picks on a college team before.
I'm almost certain it's happened in junior hockey, and it was... who played with Patrice Bergeron? Was it that team? There was a number of... There's 5 or 6 at least that I can name.
Yeah, okay.
Anyways, go on.
Yeah. So anyways, and high picks. You've got Owen Power, who the second that either the first or second game is over is going to be packing his stuff and going to Buffalo. Yeah. You've got Matty Beniers, who's at the same thing, going to be going to Seattle. You've got Kent Johnson, who might be going to Columbus, but the guy that I'm really intrigued about what the future holds for him is Luke Hughes. The 4th overall pick, the brother of Jack Hughes, the 4th overall pick of the New Jersey Devils, is a freshman at Michigan, has had a ridiculous season, like a record-breaking, epic freshman season at the University of Michigan.
Yeah.
So now what happens? Like we've seen in the last couple of years, guys staying for an extra year, including his brother Quinn. Mm-hmm. That those guys really benefited from staying for another year. So you've got Cale Makar, who could have come out after his first year and played in Colorado, waited a year. We're seeing possibly the Norris Trophy winner. We're seeing it with Quinn Hughes. We saw it with Zach Werenski. We've seen it with a lot of guys that stay that extra year. Yeah. But I'm just wondering, with what this kid has done this year and what he's accomplished, it'll be interesting to see which way that goes. I doubt it. Like if he turns pro, I doubt it'll be like right after this season. It might be this summer, where he signs with New Jersey and they get it all worked out. But it'll be interesting to see where that goes. There's a couple. Some of the other teams.
Sorry, before we get off of him, how much do you think of that he holds in his hands? Like as a 4th overall pick, now traditionally players don't have a ton of leverage in terms of when they want to turn pro, but this is a different story. And of course, he'd be going to play with his brother potentially.
I think that New Jersey would say, they might say something like this: "We'd prefer you stay another year, but if you really think you're ready, we're not adverse to it." Right. Adverse to it. And it was the same thing with Dylan Larkin when he played another University of Michigan guy,
Right.
Dylan Larkin, when he turned pro after his first year with Detroit. I talked to Ken Holland about it when he was the GM, and he said, look, here's what he told Dylan Larkin and his parents. He said, okay, you want to sign? You want to turn pro? Fine. We're going to do it. But if you're sitting in the middle of December looking out the window of a bus on your way back to, out of some American Hockey League city, and it's snowing and raining and it's dark out and you're on this bus, remember, you made this decision. Right. You know? Yeah. So, and it didn't turn out that way. He was great as a rookie, and he's been a great player ever since. Yeah. But I think that's what the message was, okay, you want to turn pro and you think you're ready?
Yeah.
We'd rather you stay, but if you think you're ready, we'll give you that chance. But if you're not good enough, you're not going to play for our team. You're going to play in the minors. And if that is what your fate is this year, you have to remember that you made that decision. So I think that would be kind of the way it would be dealt with a guy like Luke Hughes. But, maybe Luke Hughes is sitting there thinking, no, my brother did 2 years. And like there would be zero downside to him staying in Michigan for another year. Zero.
Yeah.
Like he would just dominate. He'd have a chance to play in the World Juniors again. Mm-hmm. It would be, there would be zero downside to it, but it'd be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah. OHL Cup is coming to my hometown, your adopted hometown this year.
Yeah.
What a shock that the OHL Cup would come and be hosted by the GTHL.
It always is. It's hosted by the OHL. It's always in Toronto.
Yeah.
It's always in Toronto. Yeah.
Little subtle humor, but it might have gone a little over your head, but
no. See, I got it. Here's what I'll tell you. I'll tell you what my kids used to say when I'd say dad jokes. Yeah, we get it, Dad. It's just not funny.
Oh no. I'm now the dad in that.
Ooh.
Oh. You know what? Just as a quick aside, my daughter from about 8 months old, figured out what my punchlines sound like and would laugh at the end of my punchlines.
That's a good kid.
No way that she could have understood the joke.
Yeah.
But she figured out my setup punchline and she would laugh. And so I tell Tanya a joke, my wife Tanya, and she'd like roll her eyes and then Taylor would just burst out laughing.
Or maybe she's just on like another plane of like
humor,
rule
us all one day.
Yeah.
So the OHL Cup is coming. It's starting today, actually.
It actually, the playing games were yesterday. It actually there have already been games today. Yeah. There have been a couple of games already.
Which is March 30th. What storylines are you following in this OHL Cup?
Well, this one's pretty clear. There are 3 players that are going to be playing in this tournament that have applied for exceptional player status with Hockey Canada, which just to give people an idea of what that is, you have to be 16 years old to play major junior hockey. Yep. These players are all playing a year up as under 16s.
Yeah.
And they would like to play in the OHL next year as 15-year-olds.
Right.
So I mean, it's what Connor Bedard did. It's what Connor McDavid did. It's what John Tavares did.
Yeah.
It's what Joe Veleno did. It's that thing. So
some of them work out. Some of them don't.
Most of them work out. The only one that's really been a complete bust was Sean Day.
Right.
Yeah. But the rest of them have been either pretty good or very, very good.
Right.
So anyway, that's where this is going. Like these 3 kids, they've all applied. Usually they make up their minds before the OHL Cup, but I think with, the pandemic and everything, they want to see these kids a little more before they make this decision. But there's 3 kids. One is a kid by the name of Ryan Rubrek. Okay. He's a 14-year-old kid. He doesn't turn 15 until late September. He's like 6'2", 190, skill, meanness, like Anze Kopitar type of guy. Mm-hmm. Plays for the London Junior Knights, who actually lost their first game this morning, but he had a goal. So he's one of them. The other 2 play for the Mississauga Senators. One's a kid by the name of Michael Misa, a dynamic, speedy centerman who can really create it's really weird because Mississauga they were the best team in Ontario for like in this age group forever.
Yeah.
And then they crapped out in the GTHL playoffs, the Toronto playoffs. So they had to actually play a wild card game to get into the OHL Cup.
Right.
And they did yesterday, and they won like 9-2. And so you've got this guy, you've got Michael Misa, and you've got another guy by the name of William Moore, who's a great big power forward guy, one of these guys that's really good in tight and from the hash marks. They all, from what I understand, they all could probably play in the OHL next year.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if more than one of them does. I wouldn't be surprised if none of them do. Hockey Canada's never picked more than one, you know, and so I wouldn't expect that they'll pick more than one now. But they might pick none. But these kids are all, they're all like very, very good players, and could all be top picks in major junior hockey and play in the OHL next year.
The criteria for OHL exceptional status, or CHL exceptional status, I should say,
right,
is very specific. And I think that this is what sometimes gets lost in the conversation about exceptional status, is that the criteria is not, can you do it? The criteria is, do you have absolutely nothing more to gain by not doing it?
Right. And are you able to, do you have the maturity to be able to handle this?
Right. Of course. Yeah.
Moving to Erie or wherever it is that you're going, playing for a bad team, getting hit a lot, that kind of stuff, and dealing with, some trials and tribulations along the way. They have a separate panel that does all this stuff, and they put them through all kinds of psychological testing. They watch them play, they, everything. So, they're probably going to get it right most times. Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see which one they pick, if anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've just always thought that it sometimes gets lost in the shuffle because, like you said, all three of them could probably play in the OHL next year. Right. But can they prove that they have nothing more to gain by playing a level down?
Well, they're not going to play. They're not going to play under 16 next year. No. They do have, from what I understand, and I've only seen snippets of these kids. I've seen them play a couple of times. Yeah. But in talking to scouts and agents, they don't have anything to gain by playing under 16 again. Yeah. So what they'll end up doing is they'll go to Shattuck St. Mary's or something, a prep school or something like that, and then they'll go to the OHL next year, because really there's just there's no point in them racking up these enormous numbers. I mean, Ryan Rubrick's a 14-year-old kid playing against kids who are 15 and almost 16, and he had like 79 points in 30 games. So I'm not sure there's a lot to be gained by him going back and now, being at the same age as a lot of those kids. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Shall we move on? Mm-hmm. We shall then. We shall. The Dallas Stars are a perplexing team. Yeah, that's a good way to describe them. I thought so. Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I can bust out a 3-syllable word, I'm really I'm pleased with myself. Yeah. Okay. The 2 years removed from a Stanley Cup final appearance, last year had an abysmal year, possibly because of COVID, and then the snowstorm in Texas, but then followed it up with an incredibly bad start to this season, possibly goaltending. There's a lot of reasons, but at the same time, there's a lot of reasons that the Leafs keep on washing out in the first round. Sooner or later, it gets to just be a piss off. Just do it. There's a lot of reasons, but at the same time, anyways, most recently they turned it around in a fairly large way, and they're now in a wild card spot by points percentage. That's just because they have games in hand, which you have to win, and you should. They beat Anaheim the other night, so yeah, they beat the powerhouse Anaheim Ducks. You got to win the games you can win. Those are games where you got to win those games. Yeah, you can't afford to take a night off. Yeah. Looking at the Dallas Stars lineup, though, there's a lot of intriguing pieces, and what's funny is that if you look at their points leadership, it's like Joe Pavelski, young fella. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
points leaders. But do you think that this is a team that if they do get into the playoffs could make some noise? Because, I mean, nobody expected them to go to the Stanley Cup final 2 years ago.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, I think keeping Pavelski and signing him to a 1-year extension.
Yeah.
Instead of getting rid of him at the trade deadline for futures was a real indication that this team thinks
Gutsy.
that they can do this. You know, I mean, well, it wasn't that gutsy. I mean, because you're getting him for another year. What would have really been gutsy would have been if they hadn't been able to re-sign him and risked getting nothing for him on July 13th when free agency opens, which is what may very well end up happening with John Klingberg.
Right.
I mean, they could have traded John Klingberg at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And I mean, if Ben Sherratt and Brett Kulak got the returns that they got,
Yeah.
I can't imagine what a guy like John Klingberg would have fetched on the open market in terms of future. So they clearly think they have a group that can do something special.
Yeah.
Can they win the Stanley Cup? Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not. Can they win a couple of rounds? They might be able to. Yeah. I mean, there's clearly a shift there. I mean, I think Joe Pavelski taking a 1-year deal is huge.
Yeah.
Like, he obviously is saying, I like this group. I like it here. I'm willing to go on a series of 1-year deals until I can't play anymore.
Right.
And there's absolutely zero indication that that's happening in the immediate future.
Yeah.
But the best thing about it is when it does happen, he's on a 1-year deal.
Right.
Right. And he just falls off.
Thanks for the memories.
And that's it. And then he rides off into the sunset. It's a great setup for the Dallas Stars.
Yeah.
And it speaks to their culture, obviously. Yeah. They've got a culture there that, a guy like Joe Pavelski, who could go somewhere else and chase the money and get a couple of years on a deal, says, no, I'll stay here. I'll keep playing on 1-year deals. That's great for the Dallas Stars.
Especially because he hasn't played his whole career there.
Right.
You see guys do that with teams that they played their whole career with.
Yeah.
You rarely see that with teams where a guy played, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
He's been there 2 years. This is his third year there, I think.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I think that the Stanley Cup run was his first year there.
Right. Yeah.
So...
so you've got him, and then you've got a whole host of really, really, really talented young guys.
Yeah,
I mean, Jason Robertson has been a revelation. Yeah. I mean, I think people knew he was going to be good. I don't think they thought he was going to be able to score goals the way he's scoring goals.
Yeah,
and he's a way better skater than I think a lot of people projected. He doesn't look great as a skater, but he gets there, and he just plays a real gritty game, and he just goes to the areas where he needs to go to score. You've got Rupe Hintz, who's a guy that, like, it just seems like he can do everything. And I know last year they were saying that when you find out what this guy's been playing through, you're going to be blown away. Like, he's a guy that you can put together with tape and string and stuff, and he can still be really good.
Yeah.
You've got Gurianov, you've got some really good young talent there. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Klingberg. Yeah. It's a money thing. It's just a money thing. He doesn't want to leave Dallas. He wants to stay.
Yeah.
They want him back.
Yeah.
And so it's a money thing. And if they can find the cap space, he'll stay, and if they can't, he'll go.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. But what I find interesting about Dallas too is they have, I was doing a bit of research before the podcast, and you could argue their top three prospects are all of them are leading in points per game in the respective leagues in which they play.
Yeah.
So Maverick Bourque leading the Quebec League in points per game. Logan Stankoven, a second-round pick, playing in Kamloops of the Western League, leading the Western League in points per game, just slightly ahead of Connor Bedard, by the way, but first in points per game.
Yeah.
Wyatt Johnson with the Windsor Spitfires, leading both scoring and points per game.
Yeah.
in the Ontario Hockey League.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real sort of tip of the cap to Joe McDonnell, their head amateur scout, and that staff that they've put together. That, none of these guys were like quote unquote high picks. They were all either late first round picks or second round pick.
Yeah.
And so you've got to hit on those, and they appear to have, hit on them. You know, they've got a goalie that they think in Jake Ottinger that they think is going to be a guy that is going to be really good someday.
Yeah.
And he's really good sometimes, and he's really not good sometimes, which is why they had to go out and get Scott Wedgwood at the deadline.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean they're a tweener right now with, I think, the ability to make that jump if some of these young guys come in and can do at the NHL level what they've been doing at the junior level.
Yeah. So speaking of John Klingberg, he has, any guesses how many points he has this year? Why would I tell you?
51.
Now it seems like he does badly. He's got 38 points this year.
Okay. Yeah.
In 65 games.
But he's got mono. He's had mono. He's out. Or no, it's Heiskanen. Sorry, it's Heiskanen that's out with mono. Sorry about that. Yeah.
He's got 38 points this year. You know who that ties him with? Jamie Benn.
Jamie Benn's actually had a sneaky pretty good year.
Yeah, well, look, the fact is that 38 points is not like Jamie Benn's not exactly going to win the scoring title here, right?
Yeah.
But 38 points in 65 games is a very respectable amount.
Yeah.
If you end off the year with 45 to 50 points, it's a respectable amount, right? And now that's for a forward. Now for a defenseman, that's an outrageous amount. Now
Number, not amount.
Oh, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yes, that's an outrageous number. Now, obviously, we are like,
sorry,
you're giving me like an OCD. Like I corrected a spelling error in my own notes here that only I am looking at, on the off chance that you caught a glimpse out of like my glasses.
Okay,
I wrote like OHL Cup instead of CUP Cup, and I was like, oh boy, I'm better.
I actually saw that last night, but I thought he's late. He's probably half asleep.
Yeah, well, how nice of you. I do a lot of speech to text, especially because I was watching the Calgary Flames game. Anyways, nobody cares what I do.
You're right. No one does.
But look, obviously, Cale Makar and Roman Josi are completely skewing our expectations as to what defenseman scoring is supposed to look like. But traditionally, 38 points in 65 games for defensemen is good. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just, I look at this team, and then of course, like you said, Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, Dennis Gurianov, Miro Heiskanen,
Jacob Peterson. They've got some decent guys.
Jacob Peterson, yes. They've got this incredible young core that is coming up, and it just seems like the old core will be able to age out with that young core
ready
seamlessly moving in to take their place.
And then isn't that how it's supposed to work?
And then the next young core is going to seamlessly move in to take this young group's place.
Right.
And so my question is, though, is this a recipe for perpetual mediocrity? Well,
it could be a recipe for perpetual good, not great.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so it could be a
Webster's
recipe.
Dictionary defines mediocrity as.
Yeah. Okay. No, it could be a recipe for perpetual San Jose Sharks.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like good, really good Nashville Predators. It could be a recipe for Nashville Predators.
Yeah.
Good to really good.
Yeah.
But not quite good enough.
Yeah.
But you're talking about the Dallas Stars. That would be a very attractive free agent landing spot.
Yeah.
Because of taxes, because of Texas, because of taxes in Texas. And
I love how you said right off in the sunset for Joe Pavelski, and we're talking about Texas.
Nice.
Yeah,
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, it was a very good one.
Anyways, that's where maybe you get the guy that puts you over the top, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a completely underutilized thing in the NHL is this idea of,
offer sheets.
Well, offer sheets, but I was going to say, and actually this would dovetail nicely. I was going to say the 1-year contract. Look, man, we are one... whatever, like when Steven Stamkos was up, or when John Tavares was up, or when, this year it's going to be Malkin and
when
Patrice Bergeron.
When Jesperi Kotkaniemi was up.
Yeah, but that doesn't really quite, tie in.
Fit the mold. Yeah.
But, to turn around and say to Patrice Bergeron, we are one Patrice Bergeron away from a potential Stanley Cup. Just give us a year, man. and you can still sign elsewhere. We are one Evgeny Malkin away from a Stanley Cup. Give us 1 year. The 1 year contract is a very underutilized aspect of the NHL, and I wonder if the salary cap constrictions are going to eventually force a lot of 1 year contracts for free agents. Not necessarily the older ones like the Patrice Bergerons, but for the mid-age, like when Tavares was up at 28. Right, but you could give him 1 year and then he's 29.
But teams
you can
have
still
proved,
get a 7 year.
Teams have proved time and time again that they don't learn from that, and that they don't care. They don't learn and they don't care.
So
they may still want the guy only for 1 year, but they might be willing to sign him for 3.
Right,
not caring what they get from him in year 3.
Yeah,
because in year 3, who knows what the NHL is going to look like? Who knows what the salary cap's going to look like? Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm even talking about like it benefits the player in the sense that like, look, Stamkos or Tavares, right, are the two big examples of guys that were in their early prime or late prime, I should say, right? That their contracts were up. And you can turn around and say, you can still hit big on that mega deal you want next year for $12 million a year or $11 million a year. But just give us 1 year at $4 million and let's do this.
I don't think, why would John Tavares have done that? He got to the place he wanted to be. He got the money he wanted. He got the term he wanted.
Specifically for John Tavares, yes.
Why would Steven Stamkos have done it? I mean, he got to the place he wanted to be. He got money, he got term, and he got to be part of a team that's part of a Stanley Cup contender. I'm not saying it's not a good strategy. I'm just saying I'm not sure it's going to work that well.
Yeah.
I
just wonder, as we see guys become UFAs and they become younger and younger as UFAs, if at 27, player X will not just say, I'll sign a 1 year deal and try for the cup here and then get my money next year.
Well, yeah, but it's got to be a guy who maybe has had a down year and is going to bet on himself. You know what I mean? Like
the Taylor Hall contract is kind of like what I'm driving at here. But you did it with Buffalo, which was just a tremendous boner.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the boner thing again. You said boner. So it's got to be a guy who's willing to bet on himself and say, I've had a bad couple of years. I'll come here, play for a really good team. I mean, Timo Solani and Paul Kariya did it 1 year.
Yeah, that's
they
right.
both signed with Colorado for $1 million something.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out.
Yeah.
Right? So if it does, then you've maybe hit on something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, well let's ride this one out into the sunset. The Dallas Stars.
Oh, the Dallas Stars. Yeah. Okay, I thought we still had stuff to talk about.
Steel Town, but
okay.
Yes, we have cleared our name of murder. We have solved the evil railroad tycoon. There is no more gold in the mountains.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm doing every country music, country movie, country and western movie trope I can think of.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me know when you're done. I'm just checking for stuff here. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Are you finished?
Yes, I'm done with the Western finish.
Okay, good.
Yes, yeah.
Good.
Okay. Good. The 6-shooter that has about 38 shots.
You just said you were done. You just said you were done.
The Pittsburgh Penguins, Steel Town.
Yeah.
The Pittsburgh Penguins. Before we get on the Pittsburgh Penguins, I made a joke 2 podcasts ago with Bob McKenzie when we were talking about Bobby Margarita, and I said, good thing you didn't put too much sugar. Causes hangovers. And I said, speaking of hangovers, and it was like a funny little segue. Somebody commented on YouTube and said, "You're not funny. Don't try to be funny."
Wow. Well, at least they're being honest.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I appreciated the fact that it wasn't mean. It was just,
sometimes I would say that too.
That you're not funny.
No, to you.
I know.
I'm just joshing with you, Dylan.
I'm well aware.
We are
Pittsburgh Penguins.
Okay, yep.
Well, we've only got 2 topics to go. Pittsburgh Penguins, for a change, decided to buy at the trade deadline.
Shocker.
This is a huge departure from the Jim Rutherford years where they would checks notes, buy at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
They picked up a fascinating piece, though, in Ricard Raquel. Now, would you at this point consider them a legitimate Stanley Cup contender?
Yes.
Yes. Tell me why.
Well, Because they're good. And I mean, this would not be a case of just get in and anything can happen. I mean, when you've got Chris Letang, Sidney Crosby, and Evgeny Malkin, who have done it 3 times and know what it takes, you've got a chance. You've got a chance. They can't beat the Rangers. They lost again to them last night. So if they face the Rangers, they might be submarined.
It's like a logic test. The Pittsburgh Penguins are to the Rangers what the Washington Capitals are to the Pittsburgh Penguins.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, every year we wait for it to happen, right?
For them to fall off a cliff.
Every year we wait, and we'll wait for it next year.
Yeah.
And we'll maybe wait for it the year after.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
That precipitous decline has not happened yet.
Yeah.
But part of the reason is that Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, and Sidney Crosby are such incredible pros.
Yeah.
That they just keep coming back and being good.
Yeah.
But it's also because of the fact that they have found a lot of players where other people weren't looking. They found Brian Rust, Jake Gensel, those guys that they've filled in with have been excellent. Tristan Jarry is having a very good bounce back year, like very, very good bounce back year.
Yeah.
So the question now is, can he do it in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Does he implode in the playoffs? If he implodes in the playoffs, they're done. They're done.
I mean, that could be said of almost any goaltender in the playoffs.
That could be said of any goaltender in the playoffs. But you go into the playoffs knowing that Andrei Vasilevsky's not going to implode.
Yeah.
There are guys that aren't going to implode, right?
Yeah.
You don't know with Tristan Jarry.
Yeah.
Tristan Jarry. So, I mean, if they can get way above average goaltending and things, it's just a matter of things coming together, right? So,
I mean, you could make the argument that if any team could get way above average goaltending, that they could. I mean, Montreal last year was just Carey Price and those other fellas.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But I mean, I like what they've got. I mean, Brian Boyle's having a good year, like that.
That's a feel-good story as well.
Yeah,
right?
It's great. It's great. So, yeah, do I think they're going to win the Stanley Cup? No. Do I think they could? Yes.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, and Rickard Rakell is like, he was a good pickup. He was a really good pickup.
He's kind of a playoff guy too.
Yeah, but I'm kind of wondering where he became the second coming of like Rocket Richard.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Like he's a good pickup. He's a really good pickup. But I mean, he's good. He's
you
a top 6 guy.
You said that when he came on Habs' petition in the offseason or after the offseason when Montreal got Christian Dvorak. And like the Habs fans are going crazy about this guy on Twitter. And you went, when did Christian Dvorak become the second coming of Mark Messier?
Yeah,
it's true. Crazy. No, it's very true.
Yeah,
I would say that Rickard Rakell, I mean, like you said, he's a very solid middle 6 winger. He's got a bit of an edge to him.
Yep.
Which is probably very beneficial in the playoffs, which respect to Jake Gensel and Brian Rust, they're missing the kind of that Hornqvist element on the Pittsburgh Penguins, right?
Yep.
And Rickard Rakell could potentially bring that and some scoring and some, just everything you want, he brings. I agree. He's not, he's not Richard, right?
Yeah.
But in fairness, with the legend that surrounded Richard is not really Richard anymore now, is he? It's kind of like when the goalie wrote that book about the Gordie Howe, and he said that Gordie Howe only had 2 Gordie Howe hat tricks in his career.
I don't think he had any. I don't think he had any.
What's his name? Ken Dryden wrote a book.
The goalie.
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah. No. Ken Dryden wrote a book.
Yeah, the guy that won like 6 Stanley Cups.
Yeah,
him. Yeah, a bunch of Vezina trophies.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
You're familiar with his work.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not sure that Gordie Howe even had one in his career.
I was listening to Ken Dryden being interviewed on CBC, and he said he had 2.
Oh, really?
But my point is that the legend of Gordie Howe is bigger than Gordie Howe at this stage of the game, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I'd say, like, for the Pittsburgh Penguins, I don't consider them a bona fide contender. I would, of course, with Crosby and Malkin and Letang, you have to put them down as a dark horse. But they're just 100% a step below you know, the Florida Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Colorado Avalanche. And if Vegas gets healthy, I say this knowing that I open myself up to ridicule again, but if Vegas gets healthy, I put them potentially in that category.
I don't.
I know you don't.
See, but the thing is, Dylan, is that they don't have to worry about both the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. They only have to worry about one of them.
Yeah.
Because only one of them is getting out of the second round.
Potentially none. Like, to be honest, because like there's a world here where the Florida Panthers get the same awakening that the Tampa Bay Lightning got at the hands of the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Right.
Yeah. You know, there's
possible.
a world here where that happens.
Possible.
I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
I look at Florida's defense.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Especially if Ekblad's healthy.
If Ekblad's healthy, then you've got Ekblad, Uyghur, two big, miserable SOBs to play against.
Yeah.
And then you've got Sherratt, Gudas on the second line. Oh, thank God Ekblad and Uyghur are off the ice. Well, now we get to face Sherratt and Radko Gudas. You know?
Gundas.
Anyways, but that being said, you know, like Bobrovsky he let in a lot of goals last night against the Montreal Canadiens.
He does that sometimes.
He does.
Yeah.
And so, you know, but anyways, I don't consider the Pittsburgh Penguins to be a bona fide Stanley Cup contender. Unfortunately, at this point, they have first round exit written out to me.
It could very well be. Could very well be.
You never know. Finally, before we get out of here, let's talk about the GM's meetings, which are taking place.
No, they've taken place already.
They've taken place. Pardon me.
They finished yesterday.
Yes. So time is linear. We're doing that again. As I say, getting older. There's two pieces of news that we kind of already knew about. Like they were rumored for so long, but they were confirmed at the GM meetings. And firstly, you said on this podcast before that it's crazy that two teams playing a nothing game in the dog days of the season have to be cap compliant. And then you can be in triple overtime at Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals, and it does not matter how much over the cap you are.
Right.
Looks like that might be changing. Can you give me your thoughts on that?
Slowly but surely it might be. It's not gonna change for these playoffs.
No, of course it's not going to change for these playoffs.
And if it does, it'll be for next year. But
that'd be hilarious if it did. Oh, by the way.
Yeah. But okay, so you know, as we all know that you have to be within the confines of the salary cap to play in the regular season. You have to be, you know, your roster, not just the guys you dress, your roster, entire roster has to be compliant with the salary cap. And so, you know, what's happening now is you see the situation. You saw it with Patrick Kane in 2015.
Yep.
He came back for the playoffs. He was on LTIR for a lot of the year, came back for the playoffs. You saw it last year with Kucherov, which is sort of the poster child for all of this, right? But now
you shouldn't have leaned so far into that. Just talk about sticking a bullseye on your back. You know what I mean? Like he should have just been like, yeah. You know, tough year.
Yeah, well, they went out and won, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. So, and now you're going to see if Vegas makes it. It's probably going to happen there.
Yeah.
It might happen in Toronto with Jake Muzzin. So what started as what everybody thought might be a one-off, then it's now becoming a tactic. It's now becoming a strategy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so in that evolution, you're losing the spirit of the salary cap without question.
Yeah.
You're losing the spirit of what the salary cap is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And how it's supposed to create parity and how it's, you know, because it doesn't.
Yeah.
If you can put a guy on LTR and then go out and replace him with another guy that makes the same amount of money, and then you can bring them both back for the playoffs, that's a huge advantage for teams that don't care about spending money.
Yeah.
You know, and there are a lot of teams that don't care. Like, it's not, you know, I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs don't care about spending $81.5 million. They'd gladly spend a lot more than that. Yeah. You know, so if you're going to have a salary cap, you got to have a salary cap.
Right.
And so what the GMs under, and Ken Holland was the guy that sort of spearheaded all of this too, is, okay,
Whoa, that's breaking news.
No, it's not.
I listened to the Chris Johnson show yesterday, and and he was playing the cards very close to the chest as to who was spearheading this.
Okay, well, it was Ken Holland. He was the one that sent the email.
Kenny boy, but
he was the one that sent the email out to the 10 GMs, and he was the one who started all of this. He starts a lot of this stuff. He's got a lot of good ideas. One of them is a play-in for the final playoff spot, increasing the playoffs to 20 teams, and having a play-in for the final playoff spot.
Yeah.
That, in my mind, is a crappy idea. But he has a lot of really good ideas, and this is one of them. Yeah. So he put this forward, and it's basically what he's saying is, okay, yeah, you can do this at the trade deadline. You can go out and get these players at the trade deadline. You can be over the cap. You can put guys on LTR. You can put them back in once the playoffs start. But the roster that you play in every game, the actual game roster, has to comply to the salary cap.
Right.
And so I think that's a pretty good compromise.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really good compromise.
Yeah.
And then that way you've got to decide. So, you
won't have miraculous recoveries.
Well, you
walking
still
into the playoffs.
You still will, but then you've got to decide, okay, well, our $10 million guy is coming back in. So now we have to find $10 million to sit in the press box and watch this game. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think it's a really good compromise. I would love to see the NHL do this.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I like this genie is not going back in the bottle. I would love to see a soft cap. Like that would be the ideal situation.
I'd love to see no cap. I don't think I think the salary cap's a big waste of time. It doesn't create parity. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Good teams are good. Good teams that are run well and managed well do well in any economic model.
Yeah.
Bad teams that are run poorly do badly in every economic model.
Yeah.
This is not about parity. This is about cost certainty.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is. It's about cost certainty. It's about franchise values. It's about all those other things. It's not about making the league, creating more parity within the league.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. So,
but I mean, it does create a situation where expansion becomes less of an issue. Like people will be willing to invest into expansion.
Yeah, that's
because of that.
Seattle
and I think that's a positive aspect of the cap. Speaking of the cap, like I said, it's not happening. The soft cap's not happening. This is a compromise. I agree with you. I think it's a good idea.
Well, and plus it sort of protects you against it going the other way, right? Yeah. Like the big reason why they did this in the first place was they were prepared. The NHL was prepared to have a hard cap in the playoffs.
Right.
But then one of the GMs said, what if like half my lineup gets injured?
Yeah.
Then what happens in the playoffs? Do I have to play with like 17 players?
Yeah.
14, 16 players?
Yeah.
And then they were like, ooh, humana. Okay, well, we'll do it this way.
Especially COVID does still exist.
It does. And apparently a sixth wave is coming. So
yeah. Once again, it seems confirmed that the NHL salary cap will go up by $1 million.
Yeah.
Do you think that this eases the noose on some of the capped out teams? I wrote here capital teams.
Yeah, I saw that too.
That's funny. Some of the capped out teams. And how do you think that this affects? Notice how I didn't say effects, but I said affects the offseason.
Well, I mean, I think it's better than it going down. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, we were, and like flat cap has become sort of the vernacular for the economic landscape of the NHL for the next 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Like everybody's assuming it's going to basically be a flat cap.
Yeah.
This is basically a flat cap. I mean, $1 million is not nothing.
Yeah.
What is it? It's an entry-level player.
Here's the thing, though. I think that we were just talking about injury.
Yep.
And there have been teams that have had to play this year, as you mentioned, without a full roster because of injury. Like if I was a team that was right up against a salary cap, I would leave that $1 million as a little bit of space.
Yep.
And then that allows me to be able to call up players and do these things. Like I don't think that this necessarily makes a difference on moves per se and signings per se. I don't think that this, means that you're going to sign an extra league minimum contract just for the sake of it. But I do think that this improves the product in the sense that now teams that are dealing with injuries, like if they're smart, like we know that some GMs are just going to say, hey, $1 million. I wonder if Douglas Murray wants to play.
No, I think, but the thing is it's, you're talking about keeping your powder dry, right?
Yeah.
And that's great in a perfect world.
Yeah.
But when you're up against it, it's hard to find that wiggle room.
Right.
You know, especially if you're a good team and you've got a lot of good players.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it helps. It certainly helps. Yeah. I don't think it's a panacea because in other years, the cap's gone up $3 million, the cap's gone up $4 million, the cap's gone up whatever.
Yeah.
And it's just not making those big leaps. It's making very small and gradual sort of incremental things. And I mean, I don't think it's going to change things in a big way, but I mean, it's better news than, we lost and the cap's going down, or, you know, it's staying flat or whatever. Like, at least, you know, there's some good news on the horizon that revenues are, you know, sort of more robust.
Yeah.
And we're coming out of this thing with a decent economic model, because, I mean, COVID was a huge financial reckoning for the NHL and hockey.
COVID was a huge financial reckoning, period.
Yeah,
like,
for sure. Yeah.
Not to get too personal here, but like, my mutual funds are almost back in the black.
Yeah.
They went into the red.
Yeah.
Like, by a lot.
Yep.
Anyways, that's neither here nor there. So finally, before we get out of here, another little bit of news item. A friend of mine texted me last night and said, that's not news. People do text me occasionally.
Right.
A friend of mine,
you're burying the lead again.
A friend of mine texted me last night and said, did you see that Taylor Hall punch? He said, I heard that Nazem Kadri's getting suspended 8 games for it.
Nice. Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. But the Taylor Hall punch, $5,000 fine.
Yeah.
Anything to say about it?
What do you expect me to say about it? What do you expect me to say?
I expect you to...
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's egregious. It's terrible. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm not going to go as far as the Todd Bertuzzi thing. Like, a lot of people are saying this is, it's not what Todd Bertuzzi did.
No.
Todd Bertuzzi punched and then jumped and then, you know, and that. So it's not what Todd Bertuzzi did, but it's akin to that kind of thing. So if you're going to be a league that talks about protecting the head and talks about protecting players, and then you don't suspend a guy for that, that's ridiculous. Like, personally, I think something like that should be 10 games.
Yeah.
But I would have realistically expected to be 2.
Right.
I mean, Austin Matthews cross-checks
Dahlin
in the neck, gets 2 games, and then this isn't worth 2 games?
Yeah.
I mean, the Lyubushkin hit was pretty dangerous too.
And even you could argue that this was even more intentional than the Matthews cross-check, because it wasn't the same.
Oh, yeah.
That was a jousting match, and this was a punch.
Yeah.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. If your reasoning for having fighting in the NHL is that this way you can have a release valve, a pressure valve, then you have to treat that as the pressure valve. And sucker punches are not the pressure valve. And cross checks to the head are not the pressure valve. And I know that willing combatants comes up again and again and again, but it doesn't, it's almost like a catchphrase at this point.
Yeah.
It's not actually, because this was not a willing combatant.
Right.
And so, look, the bottom line is that at no point do you get hit in the head and it's a positive thing, right? But if there was a situation where you're like, okay, I'm pissed off about situation X on the ice. I have 2 options here. I sucker punch the guy and get 10 games, which I agree with you wholeheartedly with.
Yeah.
Or I fight the guy.
Or I take his number. Or I take his number.
And exactly.
And when he's chasing
that's
down
how they
a
do
puck
it in football.
Yeah, when he's chasing down a puck in the corner.
Yeah.
Then that's my chance.
But
right?
that's how they do it in football.
Yeah.
They literally when a guy face masked our quarterback when I was playing varsity, when a guy face masked our quarterback, they literally called a timeout, said whatever his number was, 67 linebacker. They ran a dive play to that linebacker's side with me faking with the ball.
Yeah.
So that I could hit that linebacker. And now football is just the worst thing for your head ever.
Yeah.
Because I buried my head into his face. Not super proud of that, and I wouldn't do that, now.
Well,
but like as a stupid little kid. But this is my point: is that, like you said, you can take a number, and at that time, that was a legal play. There wasn't all the stuff about CTE we didn't know.
Right.
That was a legal play, and so you take a number and you do a legal play.
Right.
I agree with you. You have hitting, you have fighting. All of this stuff is legal and within the rule book.
Well, it's technically fighting isn't, but it's part of the culture of the game.
It's part of it.
I don't want to take Lyubushkin off the hook here either for the hit, because that was a dangerous hit.
Yeah.
And it was bad.
Yeah.
And that should have been looked at by player safety as well.
Yeah.
But to me, like you say, you take a number. Like Nathan McKinnon didn't take a number.
Yeah.
Mikko Rantanen got hit with a clean hit.
Yeah.
And what Nathan McKinnon is doing fighting in that situation is ridiculous.
I know.
Nathan McKinnon, so take a number.
Yeah.
He fights, he gets hurt. He's hurt now because of that fight.
Yeah. No,
so,
Yeah,
no, but going back to the Taylor Hall thing, it's really bad. Like that's potentially a really dangerous play. Yeah. And, so we'll sit here and we'll go, you got a $5,000 fine and blah, blah, blah. If that goes south and it goes the wrong way, then everybody is like, well, that's not a part of hockey. That's not tisk, tisk, tisk.
Yeah, I hate
that's
the no harm, no foul.
That's not a part of hockey. That's not part of our game. Yeah, it is.
It is.
Yeah, it really is. It really, really, really is part of the game.
I said it 2 weeks ago. No harm, no foul is one of the most insidious, detrimental ideologies in sports.
Right.
The same thing with, why is attempted murder less than murder?
Yeah.
Oh, I shot you in the head. Good thing you survived. Now I only get 3 years in prison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah, it was a potentially dangerous play, and that's where there's no there's no rhyme or reason to any of it.
Yeah.
So if Taylor Hall had knocked him out and he fell to the ice and hit his head, he'd be looking at a big suspension. But because the guy fell down and then got up and skated away, it's not.
Yeah.
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 Anyways, that was an egregiously bad play. And what bugs me is every time you see stuff like this, it's like, well, they always say, well, that's the kind of play we're trying to get out of hockey. Okay.
So get it out.
So get it out of hockey.
Yeah.
Taylor Hall makes what?
Six and change.
5 million, 1/20th of 6, 1/120th of his yearly pay is that fine.
Oh, he spent that much on a haircut at some point in his life.
I'm sure he did.
He spent that much on a haircut at some point in his life. It's crazy. I agree with you. You can get out of the game whatever you want to get out of the game.
That to me is.
So if you don't want to get it out,
well, they like it. They like it.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the problem. They like it. Yeah. They want to tell people, and then what drives me nuts is they cluck their tongues and point their fingers when it goes sideways.
Yeah,
but they like it. They like it, and I wish they'd just admit it.
Yeah, this is the hockey equivalent of when our parliament all took a knee in solidarity of Black Lives Matters, and it's like, how about you go write a bill?
Yeah,
You guys are the ones with the power here. That's fine for you and me here, but you guys are the ones that can actually make
How about some hate crime legislation?
Yeah, exactly. You guys can make a big difference in the world. So you and I can cluck our tongues, but I agree. You want to get out of here?
I think people want us to get out of here. It's been a while. It's been a long one.
Yeah, no, about average.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think I'm done.
All right. Well, thanks so much for sticking around. Check out kencampbell.substack.com. Check us out on YouTube. Oh, we got a big announcement coming up too, potentially. Big announcement. Yeah, almost certain. So stick around for that, and check us out on YouTube at Hockey Unfiltered. And of course, ratings and reviews are appreciated. Leave comments on YouTube. We read them. We joke about them. We'll joke with you, and see you next week.